The red dust of Keltor Prime swirled around Staff Sergeant Hyunwoo as he checked his rifle for the 10th time that morning. 8 months of war had turned this once green planet into a wasteland of broken rocks and blood-stained soil. The air tasted like metal and death. "Sergeant, we got movement on the ridge," called out Taemin from behind a fallen tree. The demolitions expert pointed his scope toward the jagged hills that rose like broken teeth against the orange sky. Hyunwoo crawled, forward on his belly, keeping low. His squad of 23 soldiers spread out in a line behind him. They had learned to be careful on Keltor Prime. Too many good soldiers had died because they moved too fast or made too much noise. "What do you see?" Hyunwoo whispered into his comm unit. Boram, their sniper, was positioned on a rocky outcrop 200 meters away. Her voice crackled through the static. "Nothing yet, Sergeant, but something feels wrong. The bird stopped singing 10 minutes ago. That was never a good sign. On Keltor Prime, when the local animals went quiet, it usually meant death was coming. Hyunwoo had seen it happen too many times before. The Vreks had been fighting humans for 3 years across 12 different worlds. The reptilian aliens were tough, smart, and mean. But they had brought something to Keltor Prime that was worse than their plasma rifles or their flying war machines. They had brought the Shadow Claw. Nobody in the 3rd Colonial Defense Force liked talking about the creature. In the past month alone, it had killed over 1,000 human soldiers. The thing was 12 feet tall, black as space, and moved like liquid death through the battlefield. Its claws could cut through armor like paper. Its teeth could bite through steel. Some soldiers said it was just a big animal the Vreks had trained. Others whispered it was some kind of demon they had made in their labs. Hyunwoo didn't care what it was, he just knew it had to be stopped. Movement confirmed. Boram's voice was tight with tension. "Something big is moving through the rocks, maybe 3 clicks out." Hyunwoo felt his heart start beating faster. He turned to his communications officer, a young man named Dong-hyun who still looked like he belonged in school instead of on a battlefield. "Get on the horn to base, tell them we might have contact with the target." Dong-hyun nodded and started speaking quietly into his radio. Meanwhile, So-young, their medic, was checking her supplies. She had learned to carry extra blood packs and emergency surgery tools. When the Shadow Claw attacked, soldiers didn't just get wounded. They got torn apart. The convoy of 3 armored transports sat in the valley below them like sleeping metal beasts. Each vehicle carried supplies for the main base camp, 50 kilometers to the south. Food, ammunition, medical equipment, and replacement parts for their weapons. Without these supplies, the human forces would have to retreat from Keltor Prime completely. "Sergeant," Taemin called out softly, "I'm getting bad feelings about this place. Maybe we should move the convoy through the Eastern Pass instead." Hyunwoo considered it. The Eastern Pass would add 6 hours to their journey, but it might be safer. Then again, nowhere on Keltor Prime was really safe anymore. The Shadow Claw seemed to appear wherever it wanted, whenever it wanted. "Negative. We stick to the plan. The convoy moves through Devil's Canyon in 15 minutes. Devil's Canyon was what the soldiers called the narrow pass between 2 high ridges. It was the fastest route to base camp, but also the most dangerous. If something attacked them in the canyon, there would be nowhere to run. Boram's voice came through the comm again, urgent this time. "Sergeant, I've got eyes on something. It's big, black, and moving fast toward the canyon. ETA maybe 10 minutes. Hyunwoo felt ice in his veins. He had hoped they might complete this mission without seeing the creature. No such luck. "All units, this is Bravo Leader. Code Black. The target is moving toward our position. Prepare for contact." His soldiers checked their weapons and moved into defensive positions. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from the real thing. Half of these men and women had never seen the Shadow Claw before. The other half had seen it and barely lived to tell about it. "Should we call for air support?" asked Dong-hyun. "No time. Besides, air support doesn't work against this thing. 3 fighter jets tried to take it out last week. It jumped 40 feet in the air and brought down 2 of them with its claws." The convoy started moving through Devil's Canyon right on schedule. Hyunwoo watched the 3 armored vehicles disappear between the rocky walls and felt like he was watching friends walk into a trap. "All units, move out. We follow the convoy through the canyon and provide escort." As they moved down the slope, toward the canyon entrance, Hyunwoo thought about his sister Yoonji. She had died 2 years ago when the Vreks attacked Earth's moon colonies. He had joined the Colonial Defense Force to make sure no other families would suffer like his had. 3. Canyon walls rose up around them like the ribs of some giant dead animal. The path was narrow, just wide enough for the armored transports to pass through single file. Perfect place for an ambush. "Sergeant," So Young whispered. "Look at the walls." Hyunwoo looked up and felt his blood turn cold. Long scratches marked, the stone walls gouged deep into the rock. Each scratch was as wide as a human hand and went down for meters at a time. Only one thing on Keltor Prime could make marks like that. "It's been here," he said quietly. "Recently." The first explosion came without warning. The lead transport erupted in flames as something massive slammed into it from above. Metal screamed and twisted as the vehicle flipped over and crashed against the canyon wall. Then Hyunwoo saw it. The shadow claw dropped from the rocks like a falling nightmare. Its obsidian fur seemed to absorb light, making it hard to look at directly. Yellow eyes burned like twin suns in its skull. When it opened its mouth, rows of teeth gleamed like knives. "Open fire!" Hyunwoo shouted. 23 rifles opened, up at once, filling the canyon with thunder and light. Bullets sparked off the creature's hide like raindrops. It barely seemed to notice. The second transport tried to reverse, but the shadow claw moved faster than anything that big should be. Able to move. One swipe of its claws tore through the vehicle's armor like it was made of paper. The transport exploded in a ball of orange fire. Soldiers were screaming, running, dying. Hyunwoo saw Taemin try to throw a grenade, but the creature was on him, before he could pull the pin. One moment the demolitions expert was there, the next he was gone. The third transport was trying to ram its way past the wreckage when the shadow claw landed on top of it. The vehicle's roof caved in under the creature's weight. Then those terrible claws went to work. "Fall back," Hyunwoo ordered. "Everyone fall back now." But as he turned to retreat, the canyon wall beside him exploded outward. Chunks of rock the size of cars flew through the air. The largest piece caught Hyunwoo in the chest and legs, driving him to the ground. Pain shot through his body like lightning. He couldn't feel his legs. When he tried to move, nothing happened below his waist. Blood was running down his face, from a cut on his forehead. Through the smoke and dust, he could see his remaining soldiers retreating up the canyon walls, carrying their wounded. So Young was shouting something at him, but the ringing in his ears made it impossible to understand her words. The shadow claw stood among the burning wreckage of the convoy, its yellow eyes scanning for more prey. Bodies of 17 human soldiers lay scattered around it like broken toys. Then those burning eyes found Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo woke up in darkness. His head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer and his mouth tasted like blood and dust. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. Then the pain in his legs reminded him. The convoy, the attack, the shadow claw. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Sharp pain shot through his chest where the rocks had hit him, but it was his legs that worried him most. He couldn't feel them at all. When he reached down to touch them, his hands found twisted metal and torn fabric mixed with his own flesh. "Great," he whispered to himself. "Just great." The darkness around him wasn't complete. Strange blue lights pulsed along the walls like a slow heartbeat. As his eyes adjusted, he realized he was in some kind of cave. The walls were smooth and covered with patterns that seemed to move in the dim light. Hyunwoo forced himself to stay calm. Panic would get him killed faster than his injuries. He needed to figure out where he was and how to get out. First, though, he needed to stop the bleeding. His medical kit was still attached to his belt. So Young had trained all of them in basic field medicine. He found the emergency injector and pressed it against his thigh. The pain medication hit his system like a warm wave, making everything feel distant and fuzzy. Next came the tough part. His legs were badly crushed, but they were still attached. Using strips torn from his uniform and pieces of metal from his gear, he made crude splints. It hurt worse than anything he had ever experienced, but he gritted his teeth and kept working. When he was done, He looked around for something to use as crutches. The cave was littered with strange objects, bones mostly, but also pieces of metal and technology he didn't recognize. Some of the bones were human, others belonged to creatures he had never seen before. What is this place? He wondered aloud. His voice echoed strangely in the cavern. The blue lights on the walls pulsed brighter for a moment, as if responding to the sound. Hyunwoo found 2 pieces of metal that were the right length and tested his weight on them. They would work as crutches, barely. Standing up was agony. His legs hung useless below him, and every movement sent fire through his nervous system. But he was upright, and that was something. The cave stretched out in several directions. The blue patterns on the wall seemed to be some kind of writing or artwork. They told a story in pictures that moved and changed as he watched. He saw images of creatures that looked like the Shadow Claw, but smaller and more peaceful. They lived in forests under strange purple skies. Then the images changed. Ships came from space and the peaceful creatures were captured. They were taken to dark places and changed, made bigger and more violent. The pictures showed pain and fear and endless suffering. "You're telling me your story, aren't you?" Hyunwoo said to the walls. The lights pulsed again, brighter this time. He started moving deeper into the cave, using his makeshift crutches to pull himself forward. Every step was torture, but he kept going. The alternative was to lie down and die, and he wasn't ready for that yet. The cave opened up into a larger chamber. Here the bones were piled higher, and he could see more clearly what they were. Wreck skeletons with their distinctive ridge-backed skulls, human remains still wearing pieces of military uniform, and others, aliens he didn't recognize from species, across the galaxy. In the center of the chamber was a pool of clear water. Hyunwoo crawled to the edge and looked down. The water was clean and cold. He cupped some in his hands and drank gratefully. It tasted better than anything he could remember. As he knelt by the pool, he heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps, heavy ones, with the click of claws on stone. The Shadow Claw was coming back to its lair. Hyunwoo tried to hide, behind a pile of bones, but there was nowhere to go. His crutches clattered against the stone as he moved, making noise that echoed through the chamber. He pulled out his sidearm with shaking hands, knowing it wouldn't do any good. The creature appeared at the entrance to the chamber like a piece of living darkness. Its yellow eyes swept the room and found him immediately. It moved toward him, with fluid grace, each step perfectly silent despite its massive size. Hyunwoo raised his pistol, but his hands were shaking too badly to aim. The creature stopped just out of reach and tilted its head, studying him with those burning eyes. "Go. Ahead," Hyunwoo said. "Finish it. I'm too tired to run anymore." The Shadow Claw made a sound that was almost like a question. It stepped closer and Hyunwoo could smell its breath, hot and metallic. This close, he could see that its black fur was actually dark blue, with patterns that matched the lights on the cave walls. Instead of attacking, the creature lay down. It rested its massive head on its paws and continued to watch him. Hyunwoo lowered his pistol. "What are you waiting for?" The creature made that questioning sound again. Its eyes were intelligent, more intelligent than any animal Hyunwoo had ever seen. There was something else there too. Sadness, maybe, or loneliness. "You understand me, don't you?" he said. The creature's ears twitched forward. Hyunwoo felt exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. The pain medication was wearing off, and his body was demanding rest. Against all logic, he felt safe here in this strange cave with this killer beast. "My name is Hyunwoo," he said, settling back against the cave wall. "I'm from Earth. Seoul, specifically. It's a big city with lots of lights and noise, nothing like this place." The creature lifted its head and made a soft rumbling sound. "You know, I had a sister once, Yoonji. She would have loved to meet you, I think. She always liked animals better than people." Hyunwoo found himself talking about his childhood, about the cherry blossom festivals in spring, and the way snow looked on the mountains around Seoul. He talked about joining the military and coming to fight on distant worlds. The Shadow Claw listened to every word. When Hyunwoo finally fell silent, exhausted, The creature stood up. It walked to the pool and somehow brought water back in its mouth, letting it drip into Hyun-woo's cupped hands. "Thank you," he whispered. The creature settled down next to him, its massive form radiating warmth in the cool cave. Its breathing was slow and steady, almost like a purr. For the first time since the attack, Hyun-woo felt like he might actually survive. He didn't understand why the creature hadn't killed him, but he was grateful. As he drifted off to sleep, he heard the creature making soft sounds. It almost sounded like crying. 3 days passed in the strange cave. Hyun-woo learned to move around better with his makeshift crutches, though his legs remained useless. The creature, which he had started thinking of as his unlikely roommate, brought him water regularly, and even shared some kind of dried meat that didn't taste too bad. On the 4th morning, something changed. The creature approached him differently, moving slowly and making soft sounds. It touched his forehead gently with one massive paw. Suddenly, Hyun-woo's mind exploded with images that weren't his own. He saw a world with purple skies and silver trees. Creatures like the Shadowclaw lived there in peace, but they were smaller, more graceful. They had families and played in meadows that sparkled with morning dew. Their eyes held joy instead of pain. Then came the ships. Black metal vessels that blocked out the sun. Soldiers in environmental suits rounded up the peaceful creatures like cattle. Many were killed. The young ones were taken away in cages. The images shifted. Now he saw laboratories filled with screaming. Scientists in white coats worked on creatures strapped to metal tables. They injected chemicals that made the animals grow larger and more violent. They implanted devices in their brains, small machines that delivered pain whenever the creatures disobeyed. "Dear God," Hyun-woo whispered. "They made you into this." The creature pulled its paw away from his head, but the connection remained. Now he could feel its emotions, raw and overwhelming. Decades of forced violence, every human it had killed weighing on its mind like stones. The constant pain from the devices in its brain that punished any attempt at mercy or disobedience. "What's your real name?" he asked. More images flowed between them, a sound that was like wind through crystal caves. The closest human sounds would be Velthara. "Velthara," Hyun-woo repeated. "That's beautiful." The creature made a sound that might have been her name for him. It sounded like water flowing over smooth rocks. Over the next few hours, they learned to communicate through a mixture of mental images, sounds, and gestures. Velthara showed him how the Vrex had taken her from her home when she was barely more than a cub. How they had changed her body with drugs and surgery, making her faster and stronger, but also filling her with rage she couldn't control. The worst part was the neural implants, tiny machines buried deep in her brain that monitored her thoughts and actions. If she showed mercy, they delivered agony. If she hesitated to kill, the pain became unbearable. If she tried to resist her handlers, the devices could knock her unconscious or even stop her heart. "They turned you into a slave," Hyun-woo said, anger burning in his chest. "A living weapon." Velthara's mental voice was like a whisper in his mind. "Every death brings pain, but refusing to kill brings worse pain. I cannot escape." Hyun-woo examined her head as carefully as he could. The implants were barely visible under her fur, just small bumps near the base of her skull. But when he touched them gently, Velthara jerked away in fear. "Those caused the pain?" he asked. She nodded, a very human gesture she must have learned from watching soldiers. Hyun-woo had studied engineering before joining the military. He understood electronics and computer systems. The implants were technology, which meant they could be broken or disabled. The question was whether he could do it without killing Velthara in the process. "I might be able to help," he said carefully, "but it would be dangerous. If I make a mistake, it could hurt you badly. Or worse." Velthara's eyes met his. In them, he saw something he recognized. Hope. Desperate, frightened hope, but hope nonetheless. She showed him more images. The cave they were in was just one part of a vast underground complex. Other chambers held the remains of her victims from across the years. Hundreds of different species, soldiers and civilians alike. Each death was burned into her memory, a constant source of guilt and sorrow. "You remember all of them," he said. "All of them," her mental voice confirmed. Their faces, their fear, their pain as they died. Hyunwoo felt tears running down his face. He thought about all the human soldiers who had died because of this creature. And now he understood the truth. They had died because of the Vrex, not because of Velthara. She was as much a victim as any of them. "We're going to get those things out of your head," he promised. He spent the rest of the day examining his equipment and the technology scattered around the cave. Some of it was Vrex-made, devices that had probably controlled other enslaved creatures. Using his multi-tool and some improvised components, he thought he might be able to create a device that could safely disable the implants. The work was delicate and dangerous. One wrong move could fry Velthara's nervous system. But doing nothing meant leaving her in permanent torment. As he worked, Velthara shared more of her story. She had been forced to fight in dozens of battles across the galaxy. Planet after planet had fallen because of her presence on the battlefield. Each victory for the Vrex was another weight on her soul. "I dream of home," she told him. "Silver, trees and purple skies. My mother's voice calling me for the evening meal. But I can never go back. Even if the implants are removed, I am changed. I am not the creature I was born to be." "Maybe not," Hyunwoo said, carefully connecting wires to a salvaged power cell. "But you can be something new, something you choose to be." Night fell in the cave, though the blue lights on the walls continued their slow pulse. Hyunwoo had finished constructing his improvised device. It looked like a tangle of wires and metal, nothing like the sophisticated medical equipment this kind of procedure should require. "Are you ready?" he asked. Velthara lay down and rested her massive head in his lap. The trust she was showing him was overwhelming. This creature who had been forced to kill for decades was putting her life in the hands of a human, one of the species she had been programmed to destroy. Hyunwoo positioned the device carefully against the implants. His hands were shaking, but he forced them to be steady. Velthara's life depended on his skill now. "This is going to hurt," he warned her. "I am used to pain," she replied. He activated the device. Electricity arced between the wires, and Velthara's body went rigid. Her claws dug furrows in the stone floor, and a sound like nothing he had ever heard came from her throat. Part roar, part scream, part something that sounded almost like singing. Sparks flew from the implants. Smoke rose from her fur. The device in Hyunwoo's hands grew hot enough to burn his palms, but he held on. Then suddenly it was over. The implants went dark. Velthara collapsed, her breathing shallow but steady. "Velthara," Hyunwoo called softly. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly. For a moment they held the same burning intensity they always had. Then something changed. The fire was still there, but now it was her fire, not something forced on her by alien technology. She sat up carefully and looked at her paws as if seeing them for the first time. When she looked back at Hyunwoo, her mental voice was different. Clearer, free. "The pain is gone," she whispered in his mind. "For the first time in 30 years, the pain is gone." Outside the cave, alarms began to sound. The Vrex had discovered that their weapon was no longer responding to their control signals. They were coming to reclaim her, but they were going to find something very different from what they expected. The sound of Vrex aircraft filled the air above the cave system. Hyunwoo could hear their distinctive whining engines getting closer by the minute. Through their mental connection, he felt Velthara's mixed emotions. Freedom warred with decades of conditioning. Fear battled with hope. "They're coming for you," he said, struggling to get to his feet with his crutches. "They cannot control me anymore," Velthara replied, but her mental voice carried uncertainty. "But what if the conditioning is still there? What if I cannot fight what they made me to be?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, the cave entrance exploded inward. Vrex soldiers in environmental suits poured through the opening, their plasma rifles already charging. Behind them came something Hunwoo had never seen before, a Vrex handler in specialized armor covered with control devices. The handler raised a device that looked like a metal rod covered with blinking lights. When he activated it, Velthara screamed. Even though the implants were destroyed, somehow the device still caused her pain. She convulsed on the cave floor, her claws scraping against stone as her body fought against invisible torment. "Backup control system," the handler hissed in accented human speech. "You think, you clever little human? We prepare for this day. Neural pathway already carved deep in brain. Pain remember even when machine broken." The Vrex soldiers moved to surround Hyunwoo, but their attention was focused on Velthara. She was the valuable asset they had come to recover. He was just a human, barely worth their notice. That was their first mistake. Hyunwoo had palmed a grenade while they were distracted by Velthara's suffering. Now he pulled the pin and rolled it toward the largest group of soldiers. "Grenade!" he shouted. The explosion filled the cave with smoke and flying debris. 3 Vrex soldiers went down, immediately. The others scattered, their formation broken, but the handler kept his device focused on Velthara. She writhed in agony, unable to fight back against the artificial pain flooding her nervous system. "Stop it!" Hyunwoo yelled, raising his pistol. The handler laughed. "You shoot me, human, she dies. Device linked to my life signs. I die, she dies, you understand?" Hyunwoo understood perfectly. But he also understood something else. Velthara was fighting not just the pain, but 30 years of programming that told her to obey. Every instinct the Vrex had beaten into her was screaming at her to submit. Through their mental link, he felt her internal battle. The part of her that was still the peaceful creature from the silver forests was growing stronger, fed by hope and the memory of freedom. But the weapon the Vrex had created was fighting back, trying to drag her into the familiar darkness of obedience. "You are not their weapon," Hyunwoo said, not caring that the remaining Vrex soldiers could hear him. "You are Velthara of the Silver Forests. You are free." The handler cranked up his device's power. Velthara's scream became something that shook dust from the cave ceiling. But instead of submission, Hyunwoo felt something else through their connection. Rage. Pure, clean rage at everything that had been done to her. Velthara surged to her feet, moving through the artificial pain like it was nothing more than an annoyance. Her eyes locked onto the handler, and for the first time in 30 years, she chose her own target. The handler's confidence evaporated. He tried to increase the device's power, but Velthara was already moving. She crossed the cave in 2 bounds, her claws extended. "Impossible," the handler gasped. "Pain threshold exceeded. You should be unconscious." "She's not your slave anymore," Hyunwoo said. Velthara's claws found the handler's throat before he could scream. The control device flew from his hands and shattered against the cave wall. The artificial pain stopped immediately. The remaining Vrex soldiers opened fire with their plasma rifles, but Velthara moved like liquid shadow between their shots. These were the beings who had stolen her life, turned her into a monster, and forced her to kill innocents for 3 decades. Now it was their turn to feel fear. She moved through them like death itself, but this time each kill was her choice. Each strike was justice for years of slavery. When the last Vrex soldier fell, Velthara stood among the bodies, breathing hard, but victorious. "How do you feel?" Hyunwoo asked. "Different," she replied. "When I killed them, there was no punishment, no pain from the machines, just satisfaction." Before either of them could say more, new sounds echoed from outside the cave. Human voices, military radio chatter, and the whine of approaching aircraft. "Looks like my people found us too," Hyunwoo said. Through the broken cave entrance, he could see human soldiers rappelling from helicopters. Colonel Jae-sung's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Attention. This is Colonel Jae-sung of the 3rd Colonial Defense Force. We know you're in there, Sergeant. If you're alive, identify yourself." Hyunwoo looked at Velthara. She was tensing for another fight, her body language making it clear she expected these humans to attack her just like the Vrex had. "They're here to rescue me," he explained. But they don't know about you, about what really happened. They will try to kill me, Velthara stated. I have killed many of their kind. Not by choice. And I'm going to make sure they understand. That. Hyunwoo struggled toward the cave entrance, his crutches slipping on the debris-covered floor. Velthara moved to support him, letting him lean against her massive shoulder. This is Staff Sergeant Hyunwoo, he called out through the opening. I'm alive but wounded, and I'm not alone. The response was immediate. Stay where you are, Sergeant, we're coming in. Wait, Hyunwoo shouted. I need to explain something first. The creature that's been killing our soldiers, she's not what we thought. She's been enslaved by the Vreks, forced to fight against her will. Silence from outside. Then Colonel Jae-sung's voice, tight with disbelief. Sergeant, are you saying you're with the target? I'm saying the target is a victim, just like our soldiers. Her name is Velthara, and she's the reason I'm still alive. More silence. Hyunwoo could imagine the heated discussion taking place among the rescue team. Some would want to storm the cave and kill everything inside. Others might be curious enough to listen. Finally, a new voice came through the megaphone. Dr. Minho, the xenobiologist who had been studying the creature's behavior patterns. Sergeant Hyunwoo, this is Dr. Minho. Can you confirm that the entity is displaying non-hostile behavior? Confirmed, Doctor. She saved my life and has been protecting me for days. Impossible, came Colonel Jae-sung's voice. That thing has killed over 1,000 of our people. Because she was forced to, Hyunwoo replied firmly. The Vreks implanted. Neural control devices, I removed them. She's free now. Through their mental link, he felt Velthara's amazement that he was defending her to his own people. No one had ever spoken for her before. No one had ever seen her as anything other than a weapon to be used or an enemy to be destroyed. I'm coming out, Hyunwoo announced, and Velthara is coming with me. Doctor, I think you'll find her case very interesting for your research. Sergeant, I strongly advise against, Colonel Jae-sung began. With respect, sir, she's the best chance we have of understanding Vreks bioweapon technology, and she has information about other enslaved species across the galaxy. That got their attention. The radio chatter outside intensified. Hyunwoo looked up at Velthara. Ready to meet my people? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, they will see me as a monster. Some will, but others will see what I see. A person who deserves freedom. Together, they moved toward the cave entrance. Hyunwoo leaning on his crutches and Velthara moving slowly beside him, ready to protect him if necessary, but hoping she wouldn't have to fight anymore. As they emerged into the red sunlight of Keltor Prime, 50 human soldiers raised their weapons, but they held their fire, waiting to see what would happen next. In the distance, more Vrek ships were approaching. The real battle was just beginning. Captain Soo-jin lowered her rifle first. As the rescue team's second in command, she had seen enough war to recognize when a situation wasn't what it appeared to be. The massive creature standing next to Sergeant Hyunwoo wasn't acting like the mindless killer from the intelligence reports. Sir? She said quietly to Colonel Jae-sung. The target is displaying protective behavior toward our soldier. This doesn't match any of the previous attack patterns. Dr. Minho stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. Fascinating. Look at its posture. It's positioned to shield the sergeant from us, but it's not showing any aggressive signals. No bared teeth, no raised claws. Velthara watched the humans with careful eyes. Through her mental link with Hyunwoo, she could feel his exhaustion and pain, but also his determination to bridge the gap between their two peoples. Doctor, Hyunwoo called out, I need you to scan her head. Look for signs of surgical implantation near the base of the skull. You'll find evidence of the neural control devices. Dr. Minho pulled out a handheld scanner and took readings from a safe distance. His eyes widened as he read the results. Colonel, I'm detecting massive neural scarring consistent with forced implantation of foreign technology. There are also signs of genetic modification and chemical enhancement. This creature has been extensively altered from its original biology. That doesn't change the fact that it's killed over 1,000 of our people, Colonel Jae-sung replied, harshly. Velthara made a sound that was part growl, part whimper. Through their connection, Hyun-woo felt her shame and guilt over all the deaths she had been forced to cause. She knows, he said. She remembers every single person she was forced to kill. The Vrex made sure she would remember as part of the torture. Before anyone could respond, the whine of approaching aircraft filled the air. Vrex fighters were coming in fast, their weapons already charging. All units, defensive positions, Colonel Jae-sung shouted. We've got incoming hostiles. The human soldiers scattered to find cover among the rocks. Velthara tensed, her predator instincts engaging, but instead of running or hiding, she moved to place herself between the approaching Vrex ships and the human position. What is she doing? Captain Soo-jin asked. Choosing a side, Hyun-woo replied. The first Vrex fighter screamed overhead. Its plasma cannons lighting up the ground where the humans had been standing moments before. Velthara leaped impossibly high, her claws extended. She caught the aircraft's landing gear and used her weight to send it spinning out of control into the canyon wall. The explosion lit up the red sky like a second sun. More Vrex ships arrived, but they seemed confused by what they were seeing. Their bioweapon was attacking them instead of the humans. Commands in the Vrex language crackled over their communication systems, growing more frantic by the second. Velthara landed gracefully and turned to face the next wave of attackers. This time she wasn't killing because she was forced to. She was killing to protect. All units support the target, Colonel Jae-sung ordered, his strategic mind overriding his personal feelings. Whatever that thing is, it's on our side now. The battle was swift and brutal. Velthara moved through the Vrex forces like an avenging spirit, her intimate knowledge of their tactics and weaknesses turning her into their worst nightmare. The human soldiers provided covering fire, targeting Vrex positions that she couldn't reach. When the shooting stopped, 12 Vrex aircraft lay burning in the canyon. Not a single human soldier had been killed. Velthara padded back to where Hyun-woo sat propped against a boulder, her fur singed but her eyes bright with something he had never seen before. Pride. The pride of someone who had chosen to do the right thing. How do you feel now, he asked. Like myself, she replied. For the first time in 30 years, I feel like myself. Dr. Minho approached cautiously, his scanner still active. Sergeant, the biochemical readings I'm getting are remarkable. Her stress hormones have dropped to normal levels. The neural scarring is beginning to heal already. Whatever you did in that cave, it worked. Colonel Jae-sung walked over, his expression thoughtful. He was a career soldier, but he was also smart enough to recognize an opportunity when he saw one. Sergeant, this creature, Velthara, she has intelligence and military value. But more than that, she represents something we've never had before. A witness to Vrex bioweapon programs. Someone who can tell us how many other enslaved species are out there. Hyun-woo felt a surge of hope. You're not going to try to destroy her? Destroy her? Hell no. We're going to give her a chance to help us free the others. Over the next several days, as Hyun-woo recovered in the field hospital, Velthara worked with Dr. Minho and the intelligence teams. Through their shared mental connection, she was able to provide detailed information about dozens of other species the Vrex had enslaved and weaponized. The intelligence was staggering. Across the galaxy, hundreds of different creatures were being used as living weapons against their will. Entire civilizations had been wiped out by beings who had once been peaceful, now twisted into instruments of destruction. We can't save them all, General Wansik admitted during a strategy meeting. But we can save some, and we can make sure the galaxy knows the truth about what the Vrex are doing. 2 weeks later, Hyun-woo stood in the observation deck of a transport ship heading back to Earth. His legs had been replaced with military-grade cybernetics that worked better than his original limbs ever had. Beside him, Velthara looked out at the stars with wonder. I never thought I would see space again as a free being, she said. Where are we going? Earth's moon, Hyun-woo replied. There's a nature preserve there that's been set up for refugee species. You'll have room to run, clean air to breathe, and as much privacy as you want. But you'll also have Dr. Minho and his team nearby if you need anything. And you? She asked. Will you visit? Hyunwoo smiled. Try to keep me away. Someone needs to help you tell your story to the galaxy. And someone needs to make sure you remember how to be free. The transport ship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying with it the most unlikely pair of friends the galaxy had ever seen. Behind them, the war against the Vrex continued. But now humanity and its allies had something they had never possessed before. Hope, and proof that even the most twisted weapons of war could be redeemed if someone was willing to see the person beneath the programming. 3 months later, Velthara's testimony before the Galactic Council led to the liberation of 47 enslaved species and the formation of the Coalition for Bioweapon Reform. The tide of the war began to turn as former Vrex weapons chose freedom over slavery. Hyunwoo visited her every week, just as he had promised. They would sit together under the artificial moonlight, two survivors of different kinds of battles, both learning what it meant to heal. And sometimes, late at night when the lunar winds were quiet, Velthara would tell him stories of her home world, of silver trees and purple skies, and the dream that someday she might see them again. But she was no longer a prisoner of that dream. She had found something better than the past she had lost. She had found a future she could choose for herself. In the end, that made all the difference.